On today's Locked On Giants podcast, we welcome on in Bobby Skinner, host of Giants Nation podcast. We're going to talk draft, Giants, and a whole lot more. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And happy Friday to everybody. And as promised, you asked me for him. He's here. He's Bobby Skinner, host of Giants Nation podcast. Bobby, so good to see you.
Thank you for having me on, Patty. We're as less than a week away from the NFL draft. We were talking, pre-recording how it's just the craziest time of the year where, I'm trying to start a new business, but I don't know about you, Patty. The draft always makes me feel like I haven't done enough, right? Because no matter how much preparation you do, there's just always more players to watch. So, I want to be locked in for all of it. So, I'm excited.
For sure. I mean, you're right. You never feel like you've done enough. You feel like there's not enough hours in the day, and it's a crazy time. But it's also an exciting time, Bobby. And the big thing about the Giants, and I think where I want to start is with the third overall pick. Now, a lot of people are saying that what the Giants do at number 3 could potentially set the tone for the draft. The feeling is that Tennessee will take Cam Ward. The Browns will probably take Travis Hunter. And then what will the Giants do? Will they take Abdul Carter? Will they go quarterback? Maybe take Shatter Sanders? Maybe there's somebody we're not talking about that they're going to take. How do you kind of see the third overall pick playing out for the Giants, and what would you do?
It certainly feels like they're not going to take Shatter Sanders. And that's not just going off of Joe Shane's press conference or him at the owners meeting where he kind of set the table of saying, we don't have to, because he could be lying, right? And trying to make sure no one trades at the number 2 or anything. But their actions at the quarterback position all offseason have shown that they're not that interested in drafting Shatter Sanders, going all in on Matthew Stafford, not just testing the waters. They believed Matthew Stafford was going to be their quarterback. They had a deal essentially done with the Rams, and Matthew Stafford took less money to stay with the Rams and was using them as a bargaining chip. Being in on Aaron Rodgers, it's one thing just be in on Aaron Rodgers, but the way they waited, which is crazy to think that they probably waited. He's still unsigned, so there's been more time where they haven't had him than we're waiting for him. And rumors of wanting to trade up to number 1 for Cam Ward, coming out of the combine. And then, the Titans decide that they're going to stick and pick with Cam Ward. And then not just signing Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, but signing both, so now you have the bridge starter and the veteran backup who can come in and throw for some yards and Jameis Winston. It seems like everything, and also this, Patty, their interest in the day 2 quarterbacks, or the quarterback 3 through 6 in this class, the amount of time they've spent getting to know those guys with private workouts and top 30 visits. It just seems like they want to do everything but draft Shatter Sanders, even though I think they will get a quarterback on day 2, and I think they'll go Abdul Carter, and that is my preference. I did a 45-minute film breakdown on Shatter Sanders on my channel, breaking down his good and his bad, and I just don't think the good is good enough to be a first-round level quarterback, and where Abdul Carter is a game wrecker. I don't care if the Giants are there, Brian Burns or Kayvon Thibodeau. The Giants fans should know adding a highly drafted third pass rusher to edge group is not a problem, and this edge group is not as good as those ones were when they added JPP to Justin Tuck and OCU Manura. And then you have a Dexter Lawrence in the middle too. So I lean Abdul Carter. That's mine. My big board for the Giants with 3 picks deep would be Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. And I'd be thrilled with any of the 3.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, Abdul Carter, they can do so many things with him, take advantage of his, prior experience as an off-ball linebacker, have him rush off the edge. I mean, one of the ideas that was floated on my show was using an amoeba type of defense.
Yeah,
So
look at what Dallas does with Mike. I know it seems like a lazy comparison to use Micah Parsons because he's number 11 Penn State linebacker who transitioned from stack to the edge, even though Parsons didn't do that until he got to the NFL. But the comparisons are extremely similar when you watch the way that these two guys are able to move. Micah, I think, brings a little more power to his game, and Abdul, I think, needs to add that. But we play Micah Parsons twice per year as the Giants. And guess what they do? They line him up on JMS on 4 or 5 passing downs per game, right? And that's really hard. Like, you have to double team, and if you even then, he's going to make you miss. It just allows you to do so many different things. Like, Patty, imagine this: it's 3rd down and 7, and the Giants have Dexter Lawrence in the one A gap and Abdul Carter in the other A gap. How do you how do you try and block that? And then you have Brian Burns and Kayvon in wide alignments. Like, what do you do? Like, it makes it. I mean, it would make defensive game planning so much fun. Like, Shane Bowen should be, should try and become the Ben Johnson of defense with that type of pass rush.
Yeah, definitely could be a lot of fun. Bobby, let's talk about quarterback just real quick, because obviously they need a franchise quarterback at some point. When you look at this entire class, not just, the day 1 prospects, day 2, day 3, is there a guy, in your opinion, that they could take somewhere along the line, develop him to potentially become the franchise quarterback? Or do you believe, like I do, that maybe they're better off waiting to next year when the pickings are going to be a little bit more bountiful and maybe a little better quality?
I don't even know what next year's class really looks like. I'm not that far ahead, but day 2 and day 3 quarterbacks are almost exclusively wasted draft picks. They don't even become good backups most of the time. I put out the list a couple of weeks ago on my Twitter. The only 3 that have hit since 2016 are Dak, Jalen Hurts, and Brock Purdy. Those are the only ones, I think, out of like 60 or so quarterbacks picking in that range. And you look at it's a weak quarterback class at the top. Guess what? That usually means it's weak in the secondary level too. Tyler Shugg, like, he has some good film, but I don't know if I'm betting on a guy who's going to be 26 in September and has like some disaster plays on his film. Jackson Dart, I'm not a fan of Jackson Dart at all. That Ole Miss offense it makes it easy to play quarterback. So when I watch a quarterback that's playing in that Lane Kiffin offense, I need to see you go above and beyond the offense. And when it's crunch time, be your best. And that's when he was his worst. Look at the end of the Gators game, the LSU game, the Kentucky game. He played terrible in those games, and they lost because of it. And then Jalen Milroe is the one guy that I think is worth a quote unquote swing in the 3rd round. At pick 34, I think absolutely not. I think when you take Jalen Milroe, if you're being honest with yourself, you're admitting that this pick is probably going to be wasted, but he is so talented. He's an elite runner and he's got a big arm where if he hits 60% or 70% of his potential, he can at least be a starting quarterback in the NFL. But when you watch his film, I don't know how anyone could come to the conclusion to anything but then, this guy's probably not going to be good in the NFL.
So it almost sounds like they're better off waiting, but you never know. They might take a flyer on somebody just to say, hey, look, we're taking this guy. We trust Dable to develop him, and we'll see what happens. But maybe the thinking moving forward is we're going to keep swinging until we get it right. But here's the big question, Bobby. This year, Shane and Dable have got to win. They got a mulligan, coming off of a 3-14 season, which was the franchise worst record. All right. They've got to win. So that being said, where do you stand on, them taking a quarterback with the possibility that they might not be here next year? Or, do you think just don't worry about it, just take it and let the next, if there is a new head coach and GM in 2026, let them figure it out?
Listen, if Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Cam Ward were available for them, I wouldn't care about them being on the hot seat. I'd want them to take those quarterbacks. And this is where we'll see. We'll see how it plays out in less than a week. But I do have that feeling, Patty, that they're going to take one no matter what. It's just a question of 3 or on day 2. And I still am not fully bought into this idea that Dart and Milroe are going to go early. Even I wouldn't be surprised if both of those guys are available in the 3rd. I really wouldn't be. And they have the second pick or the first pick in the 3rd round, right? So once you hit the 3rd round, they're the first team on the clock. I think that they will take some quarterback in the 3rd round or the 4th round if the guys go earlier than they expect, because they don't want to go through 4 years and say that they've never drafted a quarterback. And I know people will point to, and again, I'm not a Joe Shane or Brian Dable fan. I thought they should have been gone after this past season. But people say, oh, they just are afraid to swing on a quarterback. Outside of last year at pick 6, when you had the Penix, McCarthy, and Bo Nix, and people have their opinions on that, where has been the opportunity for them to swing on a quarterback that's worked out? I mean, if you want to say Brock Purdy, fine. But remember you had all those day 2, day 3 quarterbacks that happened the year after Brock Purdy? None of those guys have become even, proven to be backups. Last year as the example, 2022, they were CJ, or there was Malik Willis and Matt Corral and Sam Howell in that draft. Quarterbacks take a little bit of luck. It's a lot about right place and right time. So I would prefer them not take bad quarterbacks. And I think this class is filled with bad quarterbacks outside of Cam Ward. So I would prefer they don't, but I think that they're going to have to take somebody just to say that they did, right? And you even saw Joe Shane set the deck for that, even though he was asked directly about it, saying like, yeah, if we take a quarterback in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and they end up being a backup, that's not a bad thing. Cost control. So lowering the expectations of what that pick actually is. Like I think they'll take one eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would have to, just if not for no other reason, to develop, because look, Wilson's here on a 1-year deal. DeVito is technically on a 1-year deal. Winston's the only one signed beyond this year. They're going to probably have to redo the quarterback room again next year. So, why not take a young guy, develop him, see if he becomes something. At worst, he becomes a future backup for you. At best, maybe he develops into a starter. I mean, it can't hurt, right? So, hey, Giant fans, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts who are ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Upwork offers fast and easy hiring. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from, giving you options to find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and to grow your business today. Who's in your mind? You mentioned Jalen Milroe maybe being worth a swing, but you also mentioned that you're not too high on Tyler Shuck. I think one of the reasons you mentioned was because, his age. And I want to ask about that, because a lot of people seem to make that as a negative. And if you look at Tyler Shuck's college film, he's had injury issues, which would be, to me, more of a concern than the age. Because if you look at the amount of football he's played, maybe it averages out to about 4 years. So I just want to ask you about that. Why is that such a big hang up? And when you look at his film, is he a good fit for what the Giants do?
So age is it's the context around it. Like Jaden Daniels was older last year, right? But you saw what he did when he got there. My issue with Tyler Shug is you see a lot of disaster plays under pressure. and the film is good. I think the film is pretty good this past year at Louisville, but I don't think it's great to where I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is awesome. If he was 20 years old and played 2 years of college and had that film, would it be someone that goes late first? Yeah, I think there's a chance that someone would take the opportunity on that. I just don't think the film is good enough to be like, okay, this is fine for a guy who has been in college for this amount of time. Like you said, dealt with the injuries and stuff, but you know, it's not about like, oh, he's a corner. You don't want to draft a 26-year-old corner because it's like, how much are you getting out of them? A quarterback, if he's good, like I don't care that he came in the league at 26 if I get 10, 12 good years out of him. My issue is I just don't think Shug shows enough to overcome the age concerns. But he is my quarterback 3 in the class. I haven't watched Will Howard yet. He's one of my he's going to be my last quarterback watch of this year, so maybe he slides in ahead of him. But Shug is QB3 in the class for me.
All right, Bobby, let's talk outside of quarterbacks. This is a deep class for defensive linemen. It's a deep tight ends class, a deep running back class. These are some needs. I mean, the way Joe Schoen has set things up, he doesn't have a glaring need per se. I mean, you can make a case, obviously, franchise quarterback being a glaring need, but basically he could fit in depth all over the place. So let's start with some of these deep classes because they do happen to be depth needs that the Giants have on their list. So defensive line, running back, tight end, who are some guys you like from those positions for the Giants?
Defensive tackle, I think, is like the biggest need outside of quarterback going into this. Which is crazy to think of a team that has Dexter Lawrence defensive tackle being such a big need. But you look at a guy like Derek Harmon out of Oregon, right? Like that's somebody that I would love for them to get at pick 34, right? Like we'll see if he falls there, but whenever I put in those simulators, it seems like he does end up getting there. If you're looking at like round 3, so like Darius Alexander, I know people like Darius Alexander at pick 34. I'm not as high on him when it comes to that, but like he is a guy who I think could come in and contribute and give you some pass rush juice in there in the 3rd round. Aeneas Peebles out of Virginia Tech, right? He might be someone that's available that pick 99 or pick 105. A really nice pass rusher from Virginia Tech. Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee, another guy that could be available. And then you get like even on day 3, Cam Jackson, man. He's a 6'6", 330-pound, 36 arms, just monster at defensive tackle out of Florida, right? We need a run defender that you can slide Dex out to 3-tech at times and then take Dex off the field, because anytime the Giants have taken Dexter Lawrence off the field throughout the years, it's been just easy pickings for teams to hand the ball off. So those are some of the names. Obviously, if a Kenneth Grant from Michigan fell, Walter Nolan, I guess you're basically just deciding on how there's character concerns there. I don't know exactly what they are because no one ever shares that stuff pre-draft, but like he's been on a different team like every year since high school or even throughout high school. But or Alfred Collins, out of Texas. That's where, Patty, it's not just I want a defensive tackle. I want multiple. Like if the Giants went defensive tackle at pick 34 and 65, I might be the only person, but I'd be the happiest person in the Giants fan base. I'm a big believer in the double dipping at the strength of a position, not just because like, oh, well, you get 2 of them that are really good. That could be the possibility, but it's the NFL draft. Guys don't work out the way that you think in their head. So then you get the opportunity of like, all right, well, we took 2, 1 didn't work out. A lot of times it's even the guy that went higher that doesn't work out. And then you get the guy after him. So those are the guys on the defensive tackle group. For the running back group, it kind of matches with the Giants' top 30 visits. Amarian Hampton, Caleb Johnson. Those are guys that I really like for the Giants. If Amarian Hampton fell to pick 34, Cam Scatterbo, I'm not as high as everyone else on Scatterbo. I know his film is exciting, but I do worry. Like, is this a guy that I can trust to average 4.5 yards per pop in the NFL? RJ Harvey out of UCF is somebody that I like. And then the tight end group I haven't gotten like too invested in this year. But Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon is a guy I like.
Okay. Now, when you look at the Giants roster, we always talk about sneaky needs, positions that maybe aren't getting a lot of attention, but the Giants might think they need to add depth to it. What positions groups would you say are likely to be addressed that we're really not talking about?
Would you count interior offensive line?
Absolutely.
That is, when I look at pick 34 and how this all ends up, is because again, we get guys who are viewed as first rounders and like, oh, they're not going to be there, who end up falling there every year. And then if you're picking 40, you're like, oh gosh, I hope they get there. And then they don't. They go pick 33 or 36 or whatever. I look at a clump of offensive linemen. Josh Connerly from Oregon, even though I said interior, he's a tackle. That actually could be a sneaky need tackle because Illuminor has one more year on his deal, and I think he really wants to cash in. And he's an older player. Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. Donovan Jackson of Ohio State. His Ohio State teammate, Josh Simmons, who's coming off of the knee injury. Somebody from that clump, I would love to fall to pick 34. And I'd be, whoever's picking 33, I think it's the Browns. I'm convincing them. Oh, you guys don't need offensive linemen. You're good. Telling them all day. You guys need more weapons. That's what you guys need. You guys need some weapons for whoever your quarterback's going to be. So that interior offensive line group, I look at pick 34 being a great spot for someone who falls out of the first round.
Hey, Giant fans, did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required, just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed. And as easily as you stream your favorite TV shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Wi-Fi 6/6E and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive. And you get endless entertainment thanks to 4K streaming that gives you smooth access to more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services such as Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So go on and head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. What about linebacker and safety? I mean, Bobby Okereke is collecting the last of his guaranteed money this year, and there's been some talk that, there maybe he's not the best fit for what Shane Bowen does. Safety, the depth, even though they just signed Javon Holland, Dane Belton is entering the last year of his deal, and he never really developed into a full-time starter. Are those two positions that maybe you'd like to see them address?
So a third safety is valuable, right? We saw what the Giants did under Patrick Graham, where they did a lot of free safety looks with Logan Ryan, Xavier McKinney, and Jabril Peppers. And a guy that I fell in love with at the Senior Bowl and then watched this film is Billy Bowman out of Oklahoma, who I think would be perfect for that third safety, right? He can play nickel. He's so aggressive in coverage. He creates I think he had like 11 interceptions and like 15 pass breakups in the last 3 years at Oklahoma. Like a guy just understands where the ball is going to go and get to it. And if you're not putting him, he's a smaller guy though, Patty. So you got to put him in the right spot. You can't just put him one-on-one with Dallas Goedert. And expect him to win. But you can put him in the right matchups and use him as that third safety because he's versatile. And obviously your two starters are versatile in Holland and Nubin, and get some nice three safety looks on the field when you're getting a little lighter on that defensive front. And you got Abdul Carter and Kayvon and Burns on the field at the same time on some of that big nickel stuff and allow him. Linebacker, again, it's been a position that I haven't spent a ton of time watching this year. And I don't think they're going to take like a Carson Schweitzer out of UCLA. Danny Stutzman is somebody that I like out of Oklahoma. Just a guy who is I feel like is a playmaker. Shamar James out of Florida, I think is a good coverage linebacker that you could get on day 3. So I'll be honest, I haven't spent a ton of time on the linebacker class, but I certainly wouldn't let Bobby Okereke and Michael McFadden stop me from drafting someone in the end of round 3 or round 4.
Yeah, especially since Mike is entering the final year of his rookie deal. Now, on the offensive side, surprisingly, a potential sneaky need is receiver. Even though they just re-signed Darius Slayton, you know, there are some people who feel that, if they were going to take a Travis Hunter, his abilities as a receiver would complement Malik Neighbors nicely because it would now create a pick your poison type of scenario. But, since it doesn't look like Hunter might fall to them, do they need another receiver there, especially given how Jalen Hyatt, just for whatever reason, has not been working out?
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of Hyatt at all, but I do think Russell Wilson is the one QB in the NFL who gives them a little bit of value because Russell Wilson just throws so many, vertical balls on the sideline, and that's the only thing that Hyatt can do. But I don't view wide receiver as a need. But I've developed, felt like I try and learn more and more about team building and draft and stuff. I don't stress about need as much. It obviously matters, but like Jack Batch out of TCU, if he's there at pick 65, I'm taking him, right? I think that guy's going to be really good. I'm so confident that he's going to be successful in the NFL, and I'm not going to let the fact that Darius Slayton or Wan'Dale Robinson being on this team stop me. And also, we use the word replaceable way too often, Patty, when talking about players. It's like, okay, yeah, they're replaceable, but can you replace him, right? Darius Slayton, you could get anyone to do what okay, but they spent 6 years not being able to get anyone to replace what he did. And they tried, with some big money and big draft picks. But I do view Wan'Dale as replaceable. We saw what Richie James could do in this offense. It's not as good as Wan'Dale, but it was at least semi-productive. And I also think his numbers are going to take a pretty big dip this year, not because he's any lesser of a player, but his usage with Jameis and Russell Wilson is just not going to match the usage that he got with a Daniel Jones, where I thought they overused him this past year. So if they take a slot receiver in whatever round, like I'm not mad at that at all because once you brought back Slayton, I think you open the door to not paying Wan'Dale Robinson. And there's not any good contracts to really compare to see what Wan'Dale would get in the open market. I thought Khalil Shakir's contract would be like, all right, that's a good barometer to see what Wan'Dale would come in at, because not to say he would get that contract, but you could slot him in a little lower. And then he got 4 years, 53, and I don't think Wan'Dale should be getting anywhere near that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Bobby, I want to go back to the offensive line, which I know was an area of specialty for you. They brought back Greg Van Roten to play, I think he's penciled in as the incumbent as the starting right guard. They've got Jake Kubas, who flashed last year. They're going to try and convert Evan Neal to guard full-time. Am I alone when I say that I'm still concerned about that spot? And also at center where, John Michael Schmitz hasn't been horrible, but I don't know that he is kind of, he's taken baby steps instead of, what you maybe would have hoped to have seen from a second round pick. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. So like with JMS, without having watched every center in the NFL, it feels like he's like the 20th best center in the NFL. And you can upgrade at that position. And then I do commend the Giants from learning from some of their mistakes. After 2022, they had two guys who were capable of starting games in the NFL at center with Feliciano and Nick Gates, and they didn't re-sign any of them. And so they went into the draft with no center, right? And those guys, Nick Gates' contract was a little more expensive. Feliciano got like 1 year, 2.5 from San Fran. And you went into the draft with no center, and you saw when they released those videos, they were panicking when the Bears traded up because they thought they were going to take JMS, and then they got JMS. I think Greg Van Roten is a little bit of learning from that, where Greg Van Roten is no stud, but he's a starting level guard in the NFL, and bringing him back. So if again, like I said, that clump of offensive linemen aren't there at pick 34. Well, then you're not forced to just get one. And then same as 65, it allows you to be more flexible in the draft, even though I still really want to upgrade that position. Because again, Greg Van Roten or Evan Neal switching to guard is not stopping me from making any decision. If anything, it's motivating me to make that decision to pick a guard early on.
And then finally, Bobby, with the draft coming up in less than a week now, hard to believe. It seems like it's taken forever to get here. But what would you consider to be a successful draft for the New York Giants?
I know it sounds simple and people are going to get mad at me, but get good players, right? We talk about filling needs and stuff, and then we look back 3 years from now, and we're like, what did that draft? And it's like, where are the good players, right? We don't look at 2020, the 2022 draft class, and say, oh my gosh, thank God that they got a guard in the third round. No, we look at it and say Josh Azudu's bad. Or thank God we needed a tight end so bad in that class. I got Daniel Bellinger. Well, now Daniel Bellinger is their third string tight end, and I think that's one of the better picks from that class. So just get better players, and if we want to talk about like addressing needs, hit the trenches early and often. Like again, Patty, I told you if you go Abdul Carter at 3, defensive tackle at 34. Defensive tackle at 65 or 99 as well, and then you get another guard in the 5th round or another defensive tackle with the 7th round pick. I am so happy. They have 8 picks, I believe. If 5 of those are on the trenches, fine by me. Fine by me. I feel like this team has built outside in for a little too long and just been happy with the guys they have slated in at first string on their depth spots and not really planned for the number 2s. Get me depth. Get me starters and depth on the trenches. That's what I want out of this class.
I'm with you on that, and I agree with you. They've always, for whatever reason, they built from the outside in. And you go back, I don't know if you remember the days of George Young. George Young used to do it the other way. Ernie Accorsi used to do it the other way, inside out, because it doesn't matter who your skill position players are if your guys are not blocking, and it doesn't matter, who you have on defense if you're not getting and disrupting. So I am totally with you on that. Bobby, before we let you go. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, eventually they have to get that franchise quarterback. That's the most important thing. And people say nothing matters until then. Well, the stuff does matter once you get that quarterback, because it's not about just having a good quarterback. It's about trying to win Super Bowls. And when you get the other things right, then that stuff actually matters. And I think trenches are the most important thing to doing that once you find that franchise quarterback.
Totally agree. Bobby, this was great. I'm so glad you were able to come on the show. Before we say goodbye, give everybody an update on where they can find Giants Nation.
Yeah, just search Giants Nation Show. It'll pop up on YouTube, the podcast apps, and then obviously, you can find me on social media. I got to grow my Instagram account back up. My Twitter, I already have my own personal Twitter, so that's there. I was able to keep the Facebook because I guess once you make a Facebook account, you get to keep it forever. So that I got to keep that. But my Instagram went from 60,000 to 3,000. So I lost all my reach on Instagram. So at Giants Nation Show on Instagram, that's where we're trying to build it up. But check, you know me, Patty. We're doing a pre-draft podcast, live streams with interviews. We'll recap the podcast. We'll do draft breakdowns on any draft pick. We'll live stream the entire draft. We're excited for it. It's one of the most fun times of the year. Unfortunately for Giants fans, this is like the most important time of the year for us every year.
Yeah, hopefully that will. Well, I mean, every year it's important, regardless of where they pick. But I'm as much as I enjoy that they pick in the top 10, because selfishly speaking, it means I get done early in the evening. I'd like to start. I wouldn't mind going later in the draft and just watching how everything unfolds. But anyway, Bobby, thanks again for coming on. Giant fans, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with all new shows. Obviously, we'll have draft coverage. We'll take the draft coverage into the weekend. We're going to have a busy week here on the Locked On Giants podcast, as well as over on New York Giants on SI, which is where we can find all of my written work. So for Bobby Skinner, I'm Patricia Traina. Again, thank you for watching and have a great weekend, Giant fans.